My name is Richard. I have always considered myself a lucky man. My wife Pamela is beautiful, smart, and has always looked like the ideal woman. We have been together for over 10 years, and we have a daughter who is studying abroad. Life went on as usual, and I was sure that nothing could shake our family happiness. But as often happens, betrayal sneaks up on you unexpectedly. It all started when I began to notice that Pamela often stayed late at work. I didn't attach much importance to it, thinking that she was just busy with business. Pamela has always been a workaholic, and I was proud of her dedication to her work. But over time, it became clear that something was wrong. She began to pay less attention to our family, she smiled less often, and when we were together, her thoughts were always far away. One evening, when Pamela was working late again, I decided to go to her office. I felt a little awkward, but the desire to see her was stronger than anything. I went up to the floor where her office was located and met our mutual friend Tamara, who worked with Pamela. She was also surprised to see me so late. "Hi, Richard," Tamara said, trying to be friendly. "What are you doing here?" "Hi, Tamara. I came to see Pamela. I thought I was going to take her home," I replied. She smiled a little nervously and said that Pamela was probably still busy. I didn't have any suspicions at the time, but this little conversation left an unpleasant aftertaste. When I walked into her office, I saw that Pamela looked tired and a little irritated. She immediately said that she had a lot of work to do and that I shouldn't have come. I didn't say anything at the time, just offered her a ride home. From that moment on, everything started to change. I became more attentive to details. I noticed that Pamela was talking to Tamara more often, and they spent a lot of time together both at work and outside of work. I started to feel that there was some kind of secret between them, but I didn't want to believe that it could be something serious. One day, when Pamela was in the shower, I accidentally came across her phone. I'm not used to reading other people's messages, but this time I couldn't resist. There was a dialogue with Tamara. Something in that dialogue made me wary. They were discussing some meetings, talking about how much they enjoyed being together, but I didn't understand what exactly. Every day I became more and more confused in my thoughts. My suspicion turned into uncertainty, which then turned into despair. I didn't want to believe that Pamela could betray me, but the fear of losing her and our family happiness made me search for the truth. Pamela also felt my anxiety. She became more irritated when I asked her questions that she would have answered calmly before. Our conversations became superficial, and we grew apart. And then one day, when I dared to bring up the topic of our marriage again, Pamela, as if freed from a long silence, said, "Richard, everything has changed between us. I can't live like this anymore. I need space. I need time for myself." I was shocked. Did this mean she wanted a divorce? I tried to find out what she meant, but her words were as vague as fog. She just wanted more freedom. But what does that mean for our marriage? That's when I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to find out the truth, even if it would ruin my life. After that conversation with Pamela, I felt like my world was falling apart. She didn't say directly that it was over between us, but her words about needing space sounded like a verdict on our marriage. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't understand how everything could change so dramatically. Yesterday we were happy, and today she wants more freedom. But what exactly did she mean? What was her real intention? The following days were unbearable. I was constantly trying to keep myself in check, but every moment when Pamela was not around made me worry. Her words and actions became a mystery to me. I couldn't find a place for myself. My work suffered because I couldn't concentrate. All my thoughts were occupied with what was happening in our marriage. I knew I had to act, but I didn't know where to start. I was constantly tormented by the question, is there someone else in her life? I could not answer this question, but I felt that I had to find out the truth, even if it was painful. I decided that I would no longer wait for things to resolve themselves. I started looking for answers. The first thing I did was talk to Tamara. She was always close to Pamela, and I hoped I could get some information from her. We met at a cafe where we usually had coffee during our breaks at work. "Tamara," I began, trying to be as calm as possible, "lately I've been getting the feeling that Pamela is hiding something from me. Do you know what's going on with her?" She shrugged her shoulders and pretended not to understand what I was talking about. Richard, I don't even know what to tell you. Maybe she's just tired. We all go through hard times sometimes. Her answer was too general, and I wasn't satisfied with it. Tamara, we've known each other for a long time, I continued. If you know something, tell me. It's important to me. She looked at me a little longer than usual, and I felt something change in her expression. It was as if she was hesitating between telling me the truth or keeping quiet. Richard, she finally said, I don't want to pry, but maybe you need to talk to Pamela about this openly. Sometimes these conversations help. Her words did not convince me, but they made me think. She clearly knew something, but didn't want to say it directly. This conversation only reinforced my suspicions. I returned home feeling that I needed to do something more. After dinner, when Pamela left the room, I picked up her phone again. This time I decided to check everything. Messages, calls, even emails. And this is what I found. Among her emails was a correspondence with Tamara that had gone unnoticed before. They discussed some secret meetings and travels. These were not work emails, but something more personal. In one of them, Pamela wrote, "It was incredible. I want more." These words seemed to stab me right in the heart. Was it really proof of her infidelity? I started looking for more. The messages in the messengers were not innocent either. Tamara and Pamela were planning their next meeting, and Tamara wrote that she couldn't wait. What did it all mean? My hands were shaking as I read these messages. Everything indicated that there was something more than just friendship between them. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were tearing me apart. I felt I had to find out everything to the end, but I was afraid I would find out something I couldn't handle. The next day I decided to go ahead. I took a day off from work and started following Pamela. I knew it sounded paranoid, but I had no other choice. I couldn't live in the dark anymore. She went to work as usual, but instead of staying in the office, she went out on her lunch break and went to another part of the city. I followed her. She stopped at a small cafe where Tamara was already waiting for her. They sat down at a table near the window, and I watched them from a car parked nearby. Watching them, I could feel my heart clenching with pain. They looked like they had something more than just friendship between them. They were laughing, saying something to each other, and then Tamara touched Pamela's hand, and they both smiled. That was the moment when I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I decided that I had to act immediately. I had to find out the truth, even if it was worse than I could have imagined. As I sat in the car and watched Pamela and Tamara, the world around me seemed to start falling apart into small pieces. Nothing mattered anymore except what was happening in front of my eyes. Every movement they made, every gesture they exchanged, pierced me with sharp needles of jealousy and pain. My wife, my Pamela, had always been the one with whom I shared everything I considered a part of me. And now it turns out that she was hiding something so intimate, so secret from me. They looked so close to each other, as if there was nothing between them that could separate them. When I saw Tamara tenderly touching Pamela's hand, a wave of anger rose in my chest. I could not accept that she could so easily bypass me, replace me with another person. And not just another person, but a woman. It seemed like a double betrayal to me. I always thought that I understood my wife, that I knew her desires, her needs. But what I was seeing called into question our entire life together. I felt cheated, as if I had been forced out of my own home, out of my own marriage, but at the same time, something else was emerging deep inside me, something unexpected, a lustful interest. I never thought I would feel this way, but the fact that Pamela could desire another woman was perceived by me as something different. It was something strange, something new that I couldn't fully understand. I felt confused, but at the same time, I felt drawn into this unknown. If someone had told me before that I would be able to feel lustful interest in such a situation, I would not have believed them. But here I am, watching my wife tenderly communicate with another woman, and it causes a storm of mixed feelings in me. Jealousy was boiling inside me like a volcano, ready to explode at any moment. But at the same time, there was another part of me that couldn't look away from what was happening. I could see their closeness, their gentle touch, and it fueled my imagination, which I tried to restrain. At that moment, I realized that I could no longer remain a bystander. I had to find out everything to the end. I had to find out exactly what was going on between them and what it meant to me. Was it just a whim, a short-term interest, or something more that could break our marriage forever? In the evening, when Pamela returned home, I could no longer hide my anxiety. I tried to keep it together, but she noticed my state. "What's wrong, Richard?" she asked, her voice calm, but I could sense that she suspected something. I gathered my strength and decided to go all in. "Pamela, what's going on with you and Tamara?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Her eyes opened wide, and for a moment she looked shocked, but then a tense smile appeared on her face. "What do you mean? We're just friends," she replied, but I could sense the insincerity in her words. "No, not just friends. I saw you together today, and it didn't look like anything like friendship." Pamela froze. Her gaze fell to the floor. I could see her struggling to find the words, struggling with her feelings. And then she finally confessed. "Richard, I don't know how this happened. ATP, or happened, is so confusing. But yes, there is something more between us, something I can't explain." Her words pierced me like a blade. They confirmed what I feared the most. But at the same time, these words triggered a new flood of feelings in me that I couldn't fully control. Jealousy fought with lustful interest, and I didn't know how to handle it. I wanted to know more. What exactly did she feel for Tamara? Was it just physical attraction or something deeper? And most importantly, what did it mean for us? Did we have a future after this? "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, in trying to control myself. "Why did you hide it? I didn't know how you would take it, and I wasn't sure what it meant to me. It was more than just curiosity. Kanawatapishorin, or curiosity, datiti, was a feeling that I couldn't ignore, but I couldn't share with you either." Her words were like a punch in the chest. I felt betrayed and confused, but at the same time, this situation fascinated me. I couldn't let her go just like that without knowing what would happen next. We sat in silence, and I didn't know what to say. All these years I thought I knew her, but it turned out that she was hiding a whole part of her life from me. I looked at her and couldn't decide what I was feeling more: pain from betrayal or lustful interest in what was happening. I couldn't sleep that night. My heart was beating like crazy, and my thoughts were filling my head, leaving no room for peace. I knew that our marriage would never be the same, but could I live with it? Could I accept her for who she was and find a way to save our relationship? The next morning when I woke up, I realized that I had to make a choice, but I didn't know what choice I had to make yet. When I woke up the next morning, I felt as if the whole world had fallen on me. My thoughts were confused, my heart was heavy, and I had a depressing feeling in my soul. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had learned last night. My wife Pamela was cheating on me with another woman. This truth made me reevaluate our entire life together, all the moments when I thought we were okay. But now I knew it was just an illusion. Pamela behaved as usual. She cooked breakfast, talked about everyday things, as if nothing had happened. But I could see that she was tense, that she was trying not to make eye contact with me. She knew that I couldn't just accept what had happened between her and Tamara. But I couldn't just throw away all the years we had spent together either. At the table, I tried to find the words to start a conversation. But every time I opened my mouth, something stopped me. How could I talk about it? How could I find out how she felt and what I should do next? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put down my fork and said, "Pamela, we need to talk. We can't just ignore what happened. What is between us now? What do you want?" She stopped halfway to the kitchen sink, her hand hovering over her cup. I saw her sigh heavily before turning back to me. "Richard, I understand what you're going through. I don't know what to think myself. It's all so confusing. I never wanted this to happen. But something has changed in me. I can't just go back and pretend that nothing happened." Her words pierced me like a cold wind. I felt like with every sentence she said, something inside me was collapsing. But at the same time, there was another feeling, something I couldn't understand. I couldn't just ignore what I had seen in them yesterday. Was it anger? Yes, of course it was. But it was something more. "I can't just accept it," I said, trying to collect my thoughts. "I don't know how we're going to live our lives. But I know one thing. I don't want to lose you. She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and pain in her eyes. You don't want to lose me, even after all this? She asked. She can't just give up on our marriage, but I don't know if I can live with this. What does it mean for us? Do you want to be with her? Or is this just a temporary crush? Pamela sits down at the table, her hands shaking. She looks like she's struggling with herself, trying to find the right words. Richard, I don't know. I don't want to lose you, but I can't ignore my feelings for Tamara. She, she makes me happy, but not like you. It's different, and I don't know if I can just let it go. My hands balled into fists under the table. I could feel the anger and jealousy rising inside me, but at the same time I felt cornered. What could I say to her? Could I just ask her to choose between me and Tamara? Would that be the right answer? Was that really what I wanted? But instead of shouting or demanding something, I did something I didn't expect myself to do. I want to see you together, I said, not believing I had said the words. Pamela looked at me shocked. Her eyes widened in surprise and her face turned pale. What? She whispered. I want to see you together, I repeated more confidently. I want to understand what is really between you. If you really feel something for her, I want to see it. Maybe it will help us find a solution. I couldn't believe I was suggesting this myself, but something in me was pushing me to do it. I needed to see them together, to see what was going on between them. It was the only way for me to understand how to move on. Pamela looked confused, but at the same time I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. She felt that it was not just jealousy or anger, but something deeper. She didn't answer right away, but her silence spoke more than any words. Are you sure? She asked quietly, barely audible. Yes, I answered. I have to understand it to the end. Otherwise, I simply will not be able to find peace. She nodded and looked at me again, this time with a slight tremor in her voice. Okay, Richard, but I don't know where this is going to lead. I don't know either, I replied, but it's the only way for me to understand what's going on, and only then can I decide what to do next. This conversation left me with a feeling that I could not fully describe. I felt that I had entered a completely different reality, where there were no longer clear boundaries between what was right and what was wrong. I knew only one thing. I had to see everything with my own eyes to understand how to live my life. That day was the beginning of a new, unfamiliar road that I had to travel to find answers to my questions. The day the three of us met at our house seemed like something from another life. I stood in the living room, watching Pamela and Tamara talk calmly, but there was a certain tension in their eyes. They both knew that what was happening was not normal, but neither of them could predict what would happen next, and neither could I. I felt strangely calm, even though I was filled with various emotions. Jealousy, curiosity, fear, and even anxious anticipation. I didn't know what I was really looking for in this meeting, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just walk away without finding out everything. We sat down together in the living room, and the conversation was tense. I tried not to let my nervousness show, and they both looked like they were ready to leave at any moment. But then when we all finally took off our masks, the atmosphere changed. Pamela was the first to speak, her voice shaking, but she tried to be confident. Richard, I realize that this is all strange and unnatural for you, but I want you to know that I haven't stopped loving you. It's just, Tamara made me feel something new, something I couldn't find in our marriage. Her words were painful, but I felt like I was finally starting to understand. It was important for me to see everything with my own eyes to understand exactly how Pamela felt about Tamara. I looked at Tamara. She looked calmer than Pamela. Her eyes were directed at me, and I saw in them something more than just respect. I felt that we were also beginning to form a connection that I hadn't noticed before. After a long pause, I took a step forward. I want us all to be honest with each other, I said. I need to know how I feel about both of you. Pamela nodded, and Tamara just looked at me with a slight smile, as if she knew where this was going. And then everything started to unfold in a way I could not have predicted. An intimate scene happened between the three of us that seemed unthinkable at first. I didn't know what awaited me, but every moment was full of new discoveries. Every touch, every word caused a wave of emotions in me that I had never experienced before. At first, I thought it would be just an act of jealousy or a need to prove something to myself. But the deeper I dived into this new experience, the more I realized that it was not just a physical connection. Something more was being born inside me. I felt free, liberated from all prejudices and expectations. What was happening seemed to me something new, even mysterious. And what was most unexpected for me was that I began to experience some new feelings for Tamara. Her touch, her smile, her voice. All of this caused me warm emotions that I could not explain. I no longer saw her as a rival or someone who was taking Pamela away from me. She became something more to me. And when it was over, I realized that something inside me had changed forever. After that, we lay together, breathing heavily, and I felt completely embarrassed. Pamela held my hand, and I could see an understanding in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. She knew that I also felt something for Tamara, and surprisingly, she didn't look confused or upset about it. She seemed to be expecting it. Tamara, lying next to me, spoke softly. I never thought it was possible, but now after everything, I realize that there is something more between us than I ever imagined. I was so stunned by what was happening that I couldn't find words. All that jealousy, all that anger I felt seemed to have vanished into thin air, giving way to completely different feelings. I felt involved in this new world that had opened up before me. I looked at Pamela, then at Tamara, and realized that this moment had changed the three of us forever. I could no longer see our lives in the same way as before. Now we were all connected by some new, unknown force that I could not ignore. I didn't know what would happen next, but now I was sure of one thing. Our relationship would never be the same again. And most importantly, I didn't want it to be anymore. I felt that this new experience had opened me up to something I had never realized before. It was the beginning of something completely different, something I couldn't predict, but every time I felt it was taking me further into uncharted territory. And what's strange is that I wasn't afraid of it. I only felt excited about what was ahead. The weeks that followed that night were a real challenge for us. I was still trying to comprehend what was happening in our lives. My life together with Pamela had been turned upside down, but surprisingly, not in a bad way. The feelings were complicated, but also exciting. We now had something we would never have thought of before. One lover for two. It was something from the category of stories that are usually told in jokes or anecdotes. But our case was real. We became a family of three, and it opened up new horizons for us that I had never even dreamed of before. The first days were full of confusion. We were all trying to find a new balance in our relationships, to understand how to live our lives. But instead of this being a source of conflict and jealousy, we, on the contrary, became closer to each other. Tamara became a part of our lives. We spent time together, going out to dinner, going to the movies, even spending weekends together. What had once seemed impossible was now our new reality. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were a threesome that shared not only a bed, but a life. What was most surprising to me was how natural everything became. At first, I thought it would be strange, that I wouldn't be able to accept this situation. But the more we spent time together, the more I realized that we were creating a new type of family where there was no place for traditional boundaries. Pamela and Tamara both knew that this was not just a temporary fling. All three of us realized that our feelings for each other were real, that they went beyond what could be called mere physical attraction. We became closer than ever. Every morning I woke up with the realization that my life had changed forever. I no longer felt jealousy or fear. Instead, I felt only joy that our relationship had become something more than just a marriage. It was something that went beyond the traditional notions of family. We were a threesome who found satisfaction and peace in what we shared with each other. One evening, when we were all sitting together at dinner, I raised my glass and said, "Who would have thought that we would live to have one mistress for two?" This is something that usually sounds like a joke, but for us it has become a reality. Pamela laughed and answered, "Indeed, it is something from the category of those stories that are told with a smile on your face. But now it's our life, and I can't imagine it being any other way." Tamara smiled and added, "I never thought I could be happy in this situation either. But you both have shown me that love and relationships can be so different, and that's beautiful." These words made me think. We have created something unique, something that most people will never be able to understand. But for us, it became the norm. And that was the most important thing. We found our own way to happiness, and we no longer sought approval from others. Our lives went on, and we became closer every day. We found a common language and a way of living together that satisfied us all. It was a new kind of relationship, a new kind of family, and I was grateful to have had the opportunity to experience it firsthand. Every moment we spent together strengthened our bond. And what surprised me the most was how all three of us became closer than ever. It was more than just a physical connection. It was a real emotional closeness that filled our lives with new meaning. I didn't know what the future held for us, but I was sure of one thing. We had created something unique and valuable, something that could not have been foreseen or planned. And now it has become a part of our life, a part of our happiness. Our lives had changed, but no one would have noticed it from the outside. The three of us realized that the world around us was not ready to accept our new reality. Since we had become closer, we decided to keep our secret without revealing it to anyone. What happened between us remained behind the locked door of our bedroom, and we knew it had to stay that way. Pamela and I were far from young. We had gone through different stages of life, raised a child, built careers and marriages. Tamara was not a young girl either, but among the three of us, she was the one who brought freshness and a new breath into our lives. Perhaps that's why our dynamic worked so well. We all knew that our relationship was more than just passion. It was a new form of intimacy that required understanding and respect. On the outside, we looked like normal people going about our daily lives. We met with friends, worked, and communicated with our families. No one suspected that behind the doors of our home, we had created our own world. A world where there was no place for judgment, where we could be ourselves. We decided to behave very discreetly in public. Everyone knew that Tamara was a close friend of ours, but no one could imagine how close we had become. We were careful not to give any reason for gossip. We knew that if someone found out about us, it could cause misunderstanding and judgment, and we didn't want that. What was happening in our relationship was so personal and intimate that we decided to keep it to ourselves. All three of us realized that the world we lived in was not ready to accept such a non-standard relationship. We were not young, and this made our situation all the more special. Young people could find justification in their courage and desire to experiment. But for us, it was more than just a challenge or a desire to break the rules. It was a real need that we found in each other. Every time we were together in our bedroom, it was a different world, a world where there were no taboos, no restrictions. We shared our feelings, our thoughts, our fears, and our hopes. It was a space where we could be free from everything that was outside. And most importantly, we trusted each other so much that there was no need to go outside our circle. But outside the bedroom, we were very careful. We knew that this secret was ours alone, and no one else had the right to know about it. We decided to keep everything under control, not allowing any information leaks that could destroy our new harmony. There were moments when I wanted to share it with someone else, to get support or to see if there were others going through something similar. But every time I thought about it, I realized that none of our acquaintances or friends would be able to understand. They would only see the superficial, the strange, the unusual, the wrong. But they would not have been able to understand the depth of our feelings and the closeness we felt to each other. We continued to live our lives, but a new world was unfolding inside of us, with only the three of us in it. It was our secret, our union, and we did everything we could to protect it from the outside world. We knew that what was happening between us should remain only ours. And this became our common decision, our tacit agreement. No matter what happened next, we all understood one thing. Our relationship became something more than just a union between two people. We had become a family, one in which there was true love, trust, and understanding. And we were not going to lose it because of fear of judgment or misunderstanding from others.